Welcome to The Finance Story. We are a leading digital publication that celebrates life in finance. I'm your host, Vishal Krishna. Today is Raajeev Batra, partner and head of quality and risk management at KPMG. He's been with KPMG for over 17 years and has worked with the Big Four. A little bit about his resume, right? He has substantial work experience in several sectors, including power generation, transmission, distribution, urban infrastructure, and many more. He has significant industrial experience, of course, and has headed the internal audit functions of a leading global mining company and leading beverage and bottling company in India. Like I said, he has got enormous experience. It's his fourth decade in this industry, and he's also a chartered accountant. His other areas of expertise being airlines, energy, airports energy, pardon me, and natural resources and life sciences. What a wonderful resume, Rajiv. Thank you for joining us on the Finance Story.
Thank you, Vishal. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to talk to somebody with such experience for me because I've put in 20 years, but you put in double of that and the knowledge is immense. I want to talk about a little bit about your childhood. How did you begin? Who influenced you to do something in finance? Were your family members in finance at that point of time? And why CA?
I think, as I said, I vividly remember, I do not know if this was a plan or a structure or how destiny had it, but I still strongly believe there's one moment in life which is a defining moment when I was 10 years old. I so vividly remember that instance. I went to pick up my uncle who had just become a CA from returning from his overseas trip from China. So like all kids we are, and I'm talking about the late 70s, early 80s. You're talking about the era which I'm sure many of us probably wouldn't remember what India looked like. Somebody coming from overseas to receive at the airport, and this gentleman, uncle of mine, who hands over me a red ballpoint, and that's the moment I decided that's what I want to be when I grow up. Clearly, I'm sure that may have been an excitement or a dream, looking at my uncle coming from an overseas trip, handing me over a pen, which incidentally was my lucky pen for a very long time. But that was the defining moment. I do not know, as I said, I repeat, I do not think I made my choice then, but the fact of the matter is 45 years from that date, if I still remember that, I'm sure that was what made my decision that I want to be in the finance and a chartered accountant.
How did things change for you? I mean, when you finally took your CA, cleared it, you were also at PwC many, many years ago. How did your career get built? I want you to talk me through the three, 4 decades and how at each given point of time you evolved as a person, and now you've been with KPMG 17 years, of course. Talk about those early articleship days also.
I think the first break is the most critical one, and yes, I again attribute to a very dear uncle who helped me get into PwC. Obviously, if you've seen my career, I was amongst the last batch of undergraduates who were allowed to do CA, and PwC, and like any of the Big Four firms, didn't have the opportunity to. They didn't hire any undergraduates, so I had to use some connection and influence. But the reason I say this, I think it's very important that to get the first right break is so critical, because that PwC which happened for me in 1984 shaped my career, rest of the career. So that's why I place emphasis that the first break is exceptionally important. Obviously, as you mentioned, India was not the same. So it was clear, my strategy was clear. I need to get my CA as soon as possible, move to overseas location, because India had not started this finance transformation journey, or the economic, the financial changes which happened, the political changes. India was still reeling under recession, and every professional were wanting to aspire going overseas, and that's what happened. So I spent about eight years with Saudi and with EY, known as Vinny Murray over there. Pretty happy with what I was doing, working for a Big Four firm, Big Seven at that time, working for a Big Seven firm, earning decent money, settled. But I think again, destiny played its card again very favorably for me when in 1996, as you know, that's the time when under the leadership of Manmohan Singh, India was going through its economic revival. All the revival happening. And one fine day I chose, being very happy that I want to be back in India. I joined Arthur Andersen at that point in time. I took a significant salary cut from where I was, but in a matter of years, I've made more than covered up the loss of the salary from what I was drawing in the Middle East to what I Arthur Andersen to offer, and then obviously then the history plays its role. I knew for sure that I wanted to remain in profession. I need to serve clients. I need to have variety of experiences. So in my 34 of experiences, as you can see, I've largely worked with professional services firms, with the exception where two stints, as you quickly introduced me, working with one of the bottling company and a mining company. I think those were, again, rightful changes I made in my career to get some experiences on the other side of the table. But the amount of learning you get sitting on the other side really, in some way, shape, or form, changed the way my career moved and significantly helped in my career.
Now you talked about shaping careers. How do you advise young professional in finance to shape a career? Many of them, want to go abroad, but they don't know how. You went to the UAE, you did well. You could have chosen. Why not go to the US? But why chose UAE was one of my questions. But also advise young professionals on how they should manage their transformation as a leader at every given stage.
And my bit of my life experience for young finance professionals or finance professionals wanting to do, I think number of things which worked for me may not work now. Number of things. As you can see, the pace with which the business and the economies are changing. We are living in a connected world. One thing happens in any part of the world impacts us. It may not be. I do not use my skills as what I learned as a chartered accountant, but chartered accountancy gives you that financial security. Which the point I'm making is getting one professional qualification is a must for the financial security, but that is not what is going to get you to where you want to aspire. The upskilling is very important. Remaining relevant is very important to the business. So relevance is important. And in my personal advice to every professional, whether finance or non-financial, I think it's important that you be honest and sincere in what you do. Yes, you need to have a plan. You need to have a strategy to get there. But not every plan and strategy will materialize or yield the fruits or the plan the way you do that. But that should not demotivate you. I have done energy. I have done infrastructure. I have done aviation. I have done real estate. So what have I dabbled in all my life? Have I been an expert or have I been a jack of all trades? There are two clear areas where I was extremely passionate about. One is obviously infrastructure, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But the other thing, aviation. I didn't plan being in aviation when I was starting my career or even in the middle of my career. But it so happened that an opportunity came my way when I was working with KPMG, where I had an opportunity to advise GMR when they were taking over the privatization of Delhi airport. Now, 1 month into the project, I really realized what immense value my experience I can offer to GMR. Obviously, I had nothing to know about aviation, but learning from that experience, I made a pitch to the Mumbai airport, and then the rest is history. So I was there when the privatization of the aviation sector was taking off in the country. Being able to understand the opportunity, being able to surround myself with the right skills to be able to capitalize the opportunity was important for me to take there on. And at some point of time, 3 years into this, I ended up advising almost every aviation player, big aviation player in India. And that's how I say I have done aviation. Now I don't do aviation, but the point I'm trying to make, Vishal, is that it's important that you have the journey laid out in your mind. Never be disheartened with what you don't achieve, as long as you're making the steady progress towards the end. But do have your moments of sprints to say these are the small successes you want to achieve.
What are your thoughts on finance professionals coming down to starting up or even joining a startup? Do you think that's a great opportunity at this point of time, which is growing big in India,
Going
by the way?
back, no, I think startups are good. I don't want to, in my view, I don't want to bucket which is a good industry and which is not a good industry. Now, today, startup is the name of the game. Everybody is doing startup. We are seeing the success of startups. So it's a buzzword. Startups is buzzword. So I go back to, again, the same advice. Choose the right organization. It's very, very important. Even if it's a startup or established, choosing the right organization. It's important to talk about. I think if I had to make a choice and I had to advise somebody on the organization, I would obviously, I don't want to name organizations who look very fancy, if I may say, looks like a must work companies, but it's important to understand the ethos of the organization. It's understand ethos of the promoter. What are the values? I think for me, the ethos, values, and the organization culture determines the organization. You have to learn from the organization, and I'll go back to one example which I have used, and I believe not many companies have this place. We heard here companies having policies and procedures. Now, policies are nothing but converting your way of doing things in a prescribed format. That's a policy. But I have seen a company, I was seen a company which drives this policy from philosophies. And philosophies are the ethos or the values. So what is important is that when you're choosing the startup, choose the right startup. Choose the right startup, and I'm sure it will be successful.
Wonderful. UAE as a region, particular reasons why you remained there. With your skills, you could have gone global. Or was it just matter of timing and so much work that you just decided that, okay, UAE and India will be the place for me?
No, as I said, UAE was not on my plan that I will. In fact, it's ironical that '96, when I came from the Middle East, which is Saudi, during the period I was in Saudi, and I'm talking about between 88 to '96, I wanted to work at the UAE at that point of time, because obviously UAE brings the flamboyance and the world city, Dubai for that matter. At that time, people only understood UAE as Dubai. Dubai is a place to be. Uh, but this so happened, again. It's about the timing and picking the opportunity at the right time. The UAE opportunity came my way when I turned 50. Incidentally, as I said, one would say, why would you want to change a career at that stage where you're well established? And I was leading a large competency within the KPMG firm in India. Yes, I think the two things which was important at that time for me to choose UAE, it was a larger role in a smaller organization. So KPMG India versus KPMG UAE is much different in scale. In the UAE, one, it was important for me that I was picking the larger mandate for me. I was moving into the organization at a role where I'm contributing to the decision making of the organization. So I joined the XCOM. So for me, the choice at that time was important. And hence, my advice in most cases when you are changing the career at that stage of the life, it's not about the money, which should obviously, people who say that UAE offers you tax-free non-resident money, so it's good money to move to. But I think what is important is that, again, for me, all changes are linked to what difference will I be able to make to myself and the organization. If I'm able to contribute to make the difference, it was important at that stage of life to choose UAE. But I think UAE, as you can see, is a global city. UAE as a country has been investing in innovation, has been in fact investing in infrastructure, it has been seeing the positive economic growth despite the COVID, and is trying to be a place where it provides the high quality of life. So really, if you look at it, and statistics are itself speaks, in UAE, Dubai is among UAE as such become the top 5 the countries to work for and live for, and hence it attracts talent. And my personal view, the way things are going, despite the socio and political economical situation, UAE has only an upside over the next 4 to 5 years.
What are some of the challenges that shaped you? And how did you train yourself to match those challenges and deal with them and go forward?
I think the biggest challenge is change. Change can come in any shape or form. Change can happen within the organization. Change can happen, which causes you, unsettles you because I do remember there are a few moments on my life, career life, where I going steady and growth, and suddenly you find, you're not proceeding with the same level of pace with which you want.
Makes a lot of sense.
Picking up,
You want to keep moving.
yeah, you want to keep moving. Plus, you want to keep finding new challenges for yourself. So as I said, aviation being one, and I earlier mentioned about talking about infrastructure, right? Now, believe it or not, and this may amuse many people, for a large part of my career when I was in KPMG India was leading a advisory practice to help build projects, construction projects. So almost akin to project management. Now, so I was doing a service what an engineer was doing, offering service and client. But the principle driven was that I wanted to manage risk, because as you can see from my career, I'm a risk consultant. So most of my advice and professional career has been helping my clients manage risk. So in the early 2000s, remember there was a construction boom happening in India with a lot of FDI coming in, and there were a lot of promoters and owners who were putting a lot of money in construction projects. However, they needed security and assurance that all the money is being rightfully spent. And that's where I entered the service, which again goes back to the point, I picked up the uncharted areas, but it was important that I have the right skills to be able to do that. So which goes back to the point I'm making to all the professionals. There's nothing impossible. And there's nothing that everything you have to do. As long as you have the right skills and are gathered by people who have the right skills to support you. Business is business. Business has common principles. You just follow the common principles, bring the right skills. So that's where, in my view, is managing the challenge.
Quality and risk management. A lot of chartered accountants write to and say, is that a career switch that I can make in the era of AI and blockchain? So a lot of people come and ask me in this era of digital transformation, can we get into quality and risk management? What would you tell them?
Quality and risk is all about managing risk. Now, AI, technology are all enablers of business. See, they are not business. Business still has a core service offering to doing a business. Technology and AI are new skills which are enabling, or new tools that are enabling the business. And hence it goes back to the point, any new professional, in fact, any professional who was looking at, and you rightfully said, today, if you really ask me, what are the big job opportunities for any professional, and not just finance? It is AI, data scientists, in the ESG space. So these are the and robotics. These are the places where there is no dearth of opportunities. Now, if anybody wants to get in the opportunities now, there's no right or wrong time. As long as if you believe in what you want to do, you can get the right skills, and there are opportunities to pick from. The core is important. The fundamentals of business haven't changed. The fundamentals of doing business haven't changed. The way of doing business are changing. All these are new ways of doing business. Business is still serving a client or a stakeholder. Now, do serve a client, whether it is a product or service or a consulting advice. It is, at the end of it, there's a customer and a service provider. That core hasn't changed. The way of getting there has changed. And that's where the skilling is required.
Great. Okay. Last question was about the books. Do you read any books? Any recommendations to our audience? It can even be films. It can even be documentaries. It can even be art.
I'm sorry, people may find me a bit rude on saying that, but when I talk and speak to few people, reading is something which you should pick up. And I'm unfortunately that I never picked up reading books in my early part of the career, but something which is important is that for us as professionals to grow in a career, it's important that we can talk to our stakeholders, our clients, more than the work we do. In order to give a more holistic conversation, it's important that we are really attuned to the current affairs and the business affairs happening, not in our world, around the world. And hence, my advice to all professionals is read as much as current and business affairs so that you can have good non-work related conversation with your peers, with your clients, with your business associates, because that is what is important. People are not just interested for you to talk about your business, what you do, but also talk about general business affairs.
That is so true, ladies and gentlemen. And for those of you professionals watching this, you must read. And like he said, to hold a conversation is so important. And sometimes you can win a client with a talk about politics or sport. They may actually relate to you and may actually give you business. Rajiv sir, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure for you to be on the show. For me, because 4 decades of experience, so much learning. I wish to host you again.